happen in this chapter. So in this specific chapter, chapter number 11, Vishwarupa Darshan, something interesting is going to happen, because Arjuna, who, if you remember in the beginning, in the second chapter, he became from a friend to a disciple. And now he needs to come back to his state of being a friend of Krishna. And that entire transformation and what are the events that led to that particular transformation is going to be a very interesting sideline that is going to happen along with the philosophical flow of thought. There's a very beautiful, the interaction, the sweetness of the interaction between Arjuna and Krishna is also very nicely brought out in this specific chapter. So let us begin with our prayers today. So joining your palms together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So very quickly, let me open the whiteboard. So today we are going to discuss chapter number 11, which is called as Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga. So Vishwa means the universe. And Rupa means form. So Vishwarupa in terms becomes the Lord in the form of the universe. The Lord whose form is this entire universe, his physical form, which is the universe itself, right? Darshana is to make something manifest, right? So literally we use that word darshan many times, saying, oh, when you're greeting the deities, when you're taking darshan of the Lord, when you're looking at the deities, we use the word darshan. So literally darshan literally means to make something visible. So that's why when you say the Lord is giving his darshan, meaning that the Lord is making himself manifest before us, right? So this is, you can say, manifest, and yoga is yoga. So the yoga of manifesting the universal form, that is the theme of this particular chapter, right? So if you remember, we discussed in chapter number 9 that how Krishna is something and at the same time isn't blank, right? So Krishna is in this world and he isn't in this world, right? So likewise, we saw so many such opposites. So in this specific chapter, we are going to see how Krishna is material and at the same time he isn't material. Because if Krishna is indeed the absolute truth, and within absolute truth all possibilities must simultaneously exist, then the question somebody may ask is, can Krishna have a material form? Can he have a body made of matter? Because if you go back to some of our previous discussions in chapter number 4, when Krishna talks about his Janma Karamacham E Divyam, he talks about his body being transcendental, his body being divine, his body being spiritual. That is why he was able to remember his past lives, but Arjuna was not able to remember them, right? And likewise, throughout in the 7th chapter also, in the 9th chapter also, Krishna talks about how ignorant people or fools, mudhas, they think that now I have got they did not understand my parambhavam ajananto, they did not know my divine nature. They think that just because I have a form, they think this is a material form, right? So we already understood how Krishna has a spiritual form, right? His body is not like our body. Our body is different from us, right? Our body is made up of, all this flesh and bones, basically matter, whereas we, the soul, are different from matter. Unlike in Krishna's case, his entire body is spirit. He is what we see. Okay. So then a question somebody may ask, can Krishna have a material form? Right? If you say no, then you are saying that there is something that God cannot be or something that God cannot do. Right? So, yes, because Krishna, the absolute truth means all possibilities have to be true within him. So, yes, Krishna also has a material form. And that material form is what we are referring to as chapter. So this chapter begins with Arjuna making a very interesting request, right? So in the previous chapters, Arjuna heard about in the 10th chapter, Krishna presents all his vibhutis, all the mystical opulence that he has, right? Mystical virtues that Krishna has. Arjuna asks about it, and Krishna presents a whole list of them. So after hearing all of them, Arjuna makes a very interesting request. So the first 4 verses, we're going to hear about Arjuna's request. So what does he say? He says, Mat anugrahaya paramam guhyam adhyatma samyitam yat tvayoktam vachastena mohoyam vijanoto mama. He says, oh Krishna, by hearing all these instructions that you have given me about these very, very confidential spiritual topics, now my mohoyam, my illusion has now been dispelled. And then he says, oh Krishna, you have described in great detail about how you are present in this creation and still not present in this creation, right? Now, can you please tell me, you spoke about the, in the 9th chapter, 9.4 and 9.5, Krishna talks about how Maya Tatam Idam Sarvam, how he's present within this creation, but at the same time, nothing is present within him, right? And there, if you remember, Krishna uses the term Pashyame Yogam Aishwaram. That Aishwarya Yoga, Yogam Aishwaryam, right? So this Aishwarya Yoga, or the yoga of his mystical powers, mystical opulence, that was the Raja Vidya that we studied. So after hearing about this Yoga Aishwarya, so then Arjuna asks, Drashtum ichhami te rupam Aishwaryam Purushottama. I want to see this Aishwarya Rupa. I want to see this this opulent mystical form of yours. Aishwarya Rupa here specifically is referring to, I want to see this mystical form of yours, right? We are translating the word Aishwarya as mystical and Rupa as form. So I want to see this mystical form of yours by which you have entered into this universe, right? Because you also said that though you are aloof from this universe, you also present within this universe. I want to see that form, how you are pervaded through this entire universe. What is that form, right? So then he says, very humbly he presents this. Oh Lord, if you think that I may be able to behold this cosmic form, right? Oh Master of all mystics, please kindly show me this universal form of yours. Right? Very humbly, Arjuna is making this appeal to Krishna, right? So then after having this, then Krishna, very mercifully, he's going to describe his universe. He's going to depict his universal form. So text number 5 through 14, we are going to see about a short description of the universal form. So this is the very, very special form of the Lord manifesting himself as his entirety of his creation. The entire creation is being shown together as this big, gigantic, macrocosmic form, which is Krishna, right? So then Krishna begins, okay, Arjuna, here you wanted to see all my Aishwaryas, you want to see all my opulences together in one place, okay, here. And then he tells him, look, this form is extremely rare. So this is a rare form. And he says that within this form, you will see, what do you see? He says, all the hosts of Devatas, Adityas, Vasus, Rudras, Ashwini Kumaras, right? All of them, none of them ever seen this form before. It is so rare. No, even higher beings have also not seen this. No higher being has seen this. Right? And then he says, look, you wanted to see this creation, this form of mine? Look, I'm going to show you everything that is there. All the moving, non-moving, whatever is there within this creation, I'm going to put them all together in one place and I'm going to show you this, right? However, these ordinary eyes or whatever, I won't say ordinary, but this particular eyes that you have at this point, by this eyes, you cannot see me. So therefore, you need Divyam Dadamite Chakshuhu. I'm going to give you this Divya Chakshu. Divya Chakshu. Divya, Prabhupada translates that as divine. Chakshu means vision. So you need a divine vision to see this particular form of the Lord. So therefore, Krishna says, Arjuna, I'm going to award this specific divine vision to you. And as soon as divine vision was given, Sanjaya, remember Sanjaya, he is the one who's narrating, to Dhritarashtra what has happened in the battlefield. Again, he makes his re-entry into the Bhagavad Gita because now he is going to describe what Arjuna saw. He says, as Arjuna, what he was seeing, Arjuna saw in the universal form unlimited mouths. He saw unlimited mouths, unlimited eyes, right? And the universal form with unlimited wonderful visions. It is not that the form was static. Simultaneously, there were so many things happening and was able to see all of that in one place, right? And they said that it was decorated with celestial ornaments and there were so many weapons. And the Lord wore these beautiful garlands and garments, and divine scents were smeared all over his body, right? So this is literally how Arjuna saw. Can you just imagine what it means like to see unlimited eyes, unlimited mouths, right? We can't even comprehend what Arjuna was looking at, right? And the entire sight, it looked as if it was so effulgent. The universal form was so effulgent. It seemed like as if thousands, hundreds and thousands, like millions of suns. If millions of suns were to arise simultaneously, what would be the magnitude of that brightness? That is how the universal form was looking, right? Again, we cannot look at one sun rise, right? After a certain point, we cannot stare at the sun directly with our ordinary eyes. Imagine millions of suns rising together simultaneously, and Arjuna was trying to see that, right? And then it is that he was able to see in that universal form of the Lord the unlimited expansions of the universe situated in one place, although divided into many, right? Can you just imagine? I'll read it again. Text number 13. It says, Arjuna could see in the universal form of the Lord the unlimited expansions of the universe situated in one place, although divided into many thousand. So he was able to see the entire infinity in a finite space, but at the same time, everything was looking infinite. Right? So these things we just cannot comprehend with our logical understanding. This is just way beyond our humanly logic, because unlimitedness can be in an unlimited way only, but you cannot see unlimitedness in a limited scope, right? Or in a limited space, you cannot see unlimitedness, right? So this is the the Aishwarya. This is the mystical opulence of Krishna, that he can actually demonstrate this to Arjuna, right? Then bewildered and astonished, Arjuna, his hair started to stand on end, and you'll see in the next section, Arjuna starts to offer some really amazing prayers. One second. Yeah. Let's take a new page. Yeah. So now, from text number 15 through 31, we are going to hear Arjuna's prayers in astonishment. Arjuna's prayers, because he was so astonished by this entire universal form of the Lord, right? That this is how he first describes once again what he's seen, and then he's going to offer some amazing prayers. So first he begins by saying, "Oh Krishna, I see in your body all the devatas sitting. I see Brahma, I see Shiva, I see all the sages. So all divine beings, the devatas, Brahma, Lord Shiva, right? All the great sages, the divine serpent, Anantasesha, everyone he was able to see in that universal form, right? And then he says, I see in your body many arms, again, many arms, many bellies, many mouths, many eyes, right? In fact, he says, I don't see any beginning, end, or middle. So there is no beginning, right? There is no middle, and there is no end, right? Okay, when you see something as infinite, okay, you cannot see the beginning, right? That makes sense. You definitely cannot see the end, right? But you cannot even see the middle. It seems like it is pervading everywhere. Try to understand. It is not that Arjuna at that point was looking at some kind of a big gigantic screen. Sometimes when you're standing before this big screen, you may, or one of those big IMAX theater screens, and you're sitting right in the front, you will see, oh wow, you look at the movies everywhere. But even there, you can see, okay, the screen is starting here and maybe ending here, right? You know some kind of dimensions to it. But literally, it is in every direction, even the front and the back. For that moment, Arjuna even forgot that he was standing there in the middle of the battlefield. In every direction, he was only able to see this universal form of Krishna, right? It was the first 3D or maybe 10D multimedia show that was ever demonstrated, right? Arjuna was so absorbed, so involved in this kind of in that experience of looking at Krishna's universal form, right? And then he says, your form is so difficult to see because its glaring effulgence is spreading in all directions, right? And in this glowing form everywhere, again he repeats, you have so many crowns, so many clubs, and so many discs, right? And then he says, you are the supreme primeval objective. You are the ultimate resting place of all this universe. You are inexhaustible. You are the oldest. So Krishna, he starts glorifying Krishna as if he is, or as if, but for who he is, as that original Purusha. So this is an important word for us. The word Purusha, right? The word Purusha literally means enjoyer, right? But then there is a lot of philosophical significance to the word Purusha. In fact, in the Rig Veda, there are a whole set of prayers called as a Purusha Sukta. Sukta are prayers. Purusha is that universal form. So what exactly does this concept of Purusha in the Vedic philosophy is, whenever the creation is described in the Vedic literatures, right? This is the Vedic understanding of the worldly creation. Now, we're not talking about the creation at the physical level. We're talking about creation at a subtle, at a metaphysical level. If you remember chapter number 8, we spoke about these 3 levels of reality. So it is described that when the creation was made, all the different cosmic administrators, the devatas, they all were also created and they were given their positions, right? Here was Surya ready to operate, light. Here was Agni ready to operate fire. Here was Vayu ready to operate air. Varuna ready to operate water. So while all the devatas were ready in their positions, still the creation was just not happening. Something was missing. There was a missing ingredient that was not letting the universe tick. Tick as in for things to get started. It was as if everything was in a state of pause, suspended animation, right? That was how everything was in that state of standstill. And the devatas were not able to understand why is it that we all are there. If indeed we are the cosmic administrators, if the administrators are already here, why isn't the universe running? Then they realize that there is literally the soul of this universe which is missing, right? And then they start offering these beautiful prayers to the Purusha, and that Purusha Suktas are famous by that name, right? So whenever the creation episode is described in Bhagavatam or any other Vedic literature, so this concept of Purusha is that Purusha is that that manifestation of the Lord who causes things to start rolling in this material world, right? And a little later in this chapter, we'll even understand what is it that literally causes things to roll in this material world. So at this point, just understand the concept of Purusha, because why am I using the word enjoyer? Why does the term enjoyer come? Because ultimately, it is not that the devatas are enjoying this creation. It is not that you and I are enjoying the creation, right? In fact, the only enjoyer of this creation is the Purusha. That is why Bhoktaram Yagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, right? He is the real enjoyer of all the sacrifices. We discussed that in chapter 5, text number 29, right? So this concept of Purusha, ultimately it is he, the Supreme Lord, who enters into this creation, and ultimately everything is happening under his direction and for his own pleasure, right? So the moment we think that I am the individual Purusha, I am the tiny Purusha, I am that mini enjoyer, and that is what the false ego, the ahankar, makes us do, right? That it makes us think that I am the enjoyer of this world. And moment that enjoyer tendency overwhelms us, we get conditioned by material energy, or we come under the influence of material energy, and we forget our true identity as a spirit. But the moment we understand our individual relationship with the Purusha, right? And then even though we are living in this world, we will still have that kind of a spiritual state of consciousness. And that is why this Purusha Sukta prayers are considered one of the very, very advanced, sophisticated prayers in the Vedic tradition, right? And that Purusha, that universal form, that form of the Lord who is running this entire world, is what Krishna is revealing to Arjuna at this point, right? So now at this point, some of you were thinking, so is it that if I zoom out, if I go somewhere in outer space, or if I start looking at outer space with a telescope, is it that I will see somewhere Krishna standing like this, right? Well, again, no, it is not like that. So this is also a very important point. This concept of or this universal form, this is a conceptual form. What do I mean by conceptual form? So understand that it is not exactly a real form, but rather it is an imaginary conceptual form by which one can understand, or maybe if I may use the word, a better word, a functional form. A way to physically visualize the presence of Lord in this creation, right? So to give you another example, sometimes we use statements like, the body of the government, or the body of directors, or the body of leaders, right? So when you use the word body of government, we indirectly are indicating that, somewhere in the capital of the country, where the main parliament is, or where the main the government machinery, whichever building is. So if you go there, it is not that you will actually start seeing a physical body. It is not that you'll see a body where the prime minister or the president is at the head and the rest of the limbs are his body. That's exactly not what you see there. But right, what do we see when you use the word body of government? It's a conceptual form, because the government acts in such a nice cohesive way, in such a nice integrated way, as if like how well my body is working, right? Because everything in our body is interconnected and they're all working together, with perfect synchrony. So likewise, it seems like the entire universe is also working in synchrony. So to represent that, this conceptual form or the universal form has been imagined. So Prabhupada repeatedly would talk that how this universal form is not exactly a real form, but it's an imaginary form. It's a conceptual form just to explain how this world is functioning, right? So that is the little background information, right? And then Arjuna, he still starts. Then the question you may ask is, then what exactly is Arjuna seeing? If it's a conceptual form, if it's an imaginary form, then Arjuna seems to be looking at something right now, right? So again, understand, this is the divine vision that Arjuna has been bestowed with, by which he's able to visualize this conceptual form. He's able to visualize how the Lord, Maya Tatam Idam Sarvam Jagat Avyakta Murtina. Avyakta means in this unmanifested form, right? So this, if I may use another word, the universal form is also an unmanifested form, right? So this word unmanifest is a very interesting word. Prabhupada would always use the most choicest, the most accurate words to describe things. What do I mean by something is unmanifested? Which means it is there, but it is not, making its physical, you cannot perceive it with your senses, right? So likewise, this universal form, as a concept, as a functional way, it is there, but it is something that is not manifested in a physical way. Just like how this wall is manifest before you, how I am manifest before you, right? Things that our senses can perceive is what we call as manifested reality. But the universal form is an unmanifested reality, right? And this functional form of the universe is what Krishna is showing to Arjuna, right? And then as he continues further, right, he goes on to say that although you are one, you are spread throughout the sky and the planets and in the space in between them. O great one, seeing this wonderful and terrible form, all the planetary systems are perturbed, right? So he says, Drishtva Adbhutam Rupam Ugram Tadeyam. So this Adbhuta Rupa or Ugra Rupa. So this is another very important pointer for us. So Arjuna calls this universal form as Ugra Rupa. Ugra means very, very fierce, very terrible form. That's how Srila Prabhupada translates. This is a very terrible or a terrifying form, right? And then he says, again he repeats, all the various manifestations of Shiva, the Adityas, the Vasus, and so on. Again, he starts repeating this, right? Oh, mighty armed, all the planets with all the devatas are also disturbed by seeing this form. Again he repeats, I see many, many faces, many, many eyes, many, many arms, many, many thighs, legs, bellies, terrible teeth, and I'm so disturbed, right? So when some repetition has been made, there are two reasons why repetition is made in scriptures. One, for emphasis, or sometimes two, out of astonishment. Sometimes when we lose our composure, we end up repeating things, right? So that is exactly what is happening with Arjuna right now. Arjuna lost his composure, therefore he's repeating himself, right? And then he says, again he talks about, I see only your gaping mouths, your glowing eyes. My mind is perturbed by fear. I can no longer maintain my steadiness or equilibrium of mind. And then he says, oh Lord, I cannot keep my balance, seeing your blazing death-like faces and awful teeth in all directions. I am bewildered, right? So this form, why is he calling it Ugra Rupa, or a terrible form, right? In this form of the Lord is in his most fearsome state. He's inducing a sense of fear. And we will understand why the predominant emotion at this state of Arjuna, right? Arjuna is in a state of fear. He's terrified. He's experiencing a state of fear, right? And then look what else Arjuna observes. He says, all the sons of Dhritarashtra, along with their kings and Bhishma and Drona and Karna, and not just the enemy side, our own chief soldiers are also rushing into your fearful mouth. And some I see trapped with head smashed between your teeth. If you remember just a verse before in text number 25, he describes Krishna's face to be like the face of death, and his teeth to be like death, awful teeth of death. And crushed between those teeth, now Arjuna is seeing all the soldiers who have assembled there in the battlefield, right? Indirectly indicating that all these soldiers are going to die, right? And then he gives a very, very beautiful description. As the waves of rivers flow into the ocean, so do all these warriors enter blazing into your mouth. And he gives another simile. He says, I see all these people rushing full speed into your mouths as moths dash to destruction in a blazing fire, right? So like this. So two examples are given, how a river flows towards an ocean. In that way, in a sense, a river is reaching its natural destination by entering into the ocean, right? So likewise, for many good warriors, for many glorious warriors, that death which is going to come is a natural end state for them. And then there are also some moth-like people who are just rushing towards their own death. You know, when a firefly or a bug just attracted to bright light, right? It is just it just very uncontrollably, irresistibly, it just flies into the fire and meets its own death. So these are the wicked people who are there, driven by their dark and passionate tendencies. They have come into this war and they're literally rushing towards their own death, like that. And then he says, oh Vishnu, I see you devouring all people, all sides with your flaming mouths, covering all the universe with your effulgence. You are manifest with terrible scorching rays, right? And then Arjuna, then he really feels overwhelmed. And then he says, oh Lord, please tell me, who are you? I offer my obeisance unto you, right? But I don't know where to offer my obeisance, because I don't see your starting, middle, and end. I don't even know how to offer my obeisances unto you, right? I want to know about you, right? I do not know what your mission is. Here is Arjuna completely overwhelmed, and he expresses a question that, Krishna, who are you? I want to know about you, right? So this is a very important turning point, because now Krishna is going to reveal who he really is, or what is that form that Krishna is revealing to Arjuna. And that description in the next few verses, from text number 32 through 34, Krishna is going to talk about Krishna as the time factor, right? So he says, Kalosmi lokakshekrit pravruddho, right? Time I am, and what does this time do? So Krishna describes what is this universal form, what is this Virata Rupa or the universal form, right? This is Krishna's form as the time factor. So this is a very, very special darshan that Krishna is giving Arjuna. Now, if you remember, I described earlier how this universal form is the conceptual form of looking at his entire universe, right? So that is the more classical understanding of the word Virata Rupa or Vishwarupa or universal form. But specifically, our Acharya has explained that this specific form that Krishna is showing to Arjuna is a very, very special kind of a universal form. Here, he is not showing the physical aspect of this universe, but rather he's showing the functional aspect of this universe. And if you remember earlier, I told that I gave this whole long description of how all the devatas are all positioned, ready to run the universe, but the universe is not running. So what is it that causes anything to run is the time factor. Until the time enters into this creation, things don't tick. The world does not function. And we cannot comprehend this because we do not know what timelessness means. Well, from the 9th chapter, we had this whole description of time dilation. We got a faint glimpse of what timeless reality means. But within this material world of these 14 planetary systems, we are all slaves of time, right? We do not understand what time is. Time is not what you see of the clock, right? But time is just an indication of that. But literally, time is what that is causing even that clock to tick, right? And what is this time factor doing, right? He says, Lokakshayakrit, I am the destroyer of these three worlds. So literally, what is time doing to all of us? Time is destroying us. Literally, from the beginning of this class to this point, we all have gone through some level of destruction. There's so many cells within our body that have been destroyed. Even this wall behind me is crumpling as we speak. At a very, very microscopic level, you will see that there is some deterioration happening in this wall, right? Just many times we don't perceive this very, very slow effect of time. But literally what time is doing to all of us, it is causing us to age. And what is aging? Coming close to our eventual destruction. So destruction is not just that one moment, right? But rather every moment we are all dying, we are all coming closer to death, we are all destroying, we are all going through this phase of destruction. And that is what this time factor so expertly does, right? And it is this time factor which is literally the unmanifested form of the Lord by which he's running this show called as material world. So to understand how we can perceive the concept of time once again, right? I'll give you another very nice example. So imagine where you are trying to cook in a pot. You're trying to cook some khichdi, you're trying to cook some broth, right? So what do? So you take some water, right? Fill half of the pot with water. Then you take some grains, pulses, right? You put all your ingredients, right? You put some spices, probably you put some vegetables, maybe you put some tomatoes and carrots, right? Maybe you'll add some green peas, right? And all your favorite vegetables, you start putting all of them, right? And then you start waiting. So what happens as you keep waiting and waiting and waiting? Nothing. Because something is missing. There is one important ingredient which is missing. And what is that important ingredient? That important ingredient is the fire. This pot needs to be on a flame. And when it comes in contact with that flame, that is when the ingredients inside the pot, they start to get cooked, right? Now, when all of this is happening, suddenly Miss Tomato asks Mr. Potato that, hey, do you know that there is something called as fire? And Mr. Potato is like, fire? What is that? I never heard of anything called as fire. I have never seen fire. And what I do not see, I do not believe. Right? But unknown to both Miss Tomato and Mr. Potato, that fire actually already entered into that pot. How did he enter into the pot? In the form of the heat. He is very invisibly entered into the pot and causing the whole operation to tick, the whole cooking process to happen, right? And that is how the time factor is. So in this simile that I gave you, if this heat is the time factor, then the flame outside is Ishvara or Krishna, the Supreme Lord, right? So through this medium called as heat, the fire enters into the pot and causes the whole transformation to take place. Likewise, through the medium called as time, Krishna enters into this creation and he causes the whole creation to function, right? And that is what, so when I use the word creation to function, so what do I mean? Everything, the wind is blowing, the oceans are moving, the mountains are crumbling, right? The sun is rising. All of these are happening under the influence of time, right? Of course, to even go a little more deeper in the science of time, actually, what exactly is the time doing? Time creates an experience of past, present, and future, right? And this is something a little deeper but very interesting to meditate upon, right? Literally what time does to us is it creates an experience of past, present, and future, right? So when I say past, present, and future, past is what that has been destroyed, present is what that has been maintained, future is what that is going to come into creation, come into existence. So this creation, maintenance, and destruction is an experience that is very much part of this material reality. So this experience of past, present, and future is what we call as a material experience. When I enter into a timeless domain, when I enter into a spiritual domain, there is no concept of past and future. In fact, they are all flexible. They are also interchangeable. But all that remains is a strong present, understanding of the present. And that is why we say, when you say time has stopped, when a yogi goes into meditation, or we heard the story of Raghunath Das Goswami, right? When you say that, spiritual reality is a timeless reality, what we mean is that all that exists is an infinite present moment. And that is why when you see happiness for us in this material world is a fleeting phenomena. Why? Because you experience in that one moment and then immediately it gets destroyed. It becomes a thing of the past. But when you are only living in that present, in that one moment, right? Then what happens? Happiness becomes an eternal state of your existence, right? That is what Satchit Ananda means. And that is what spiritual reality is, right? But time is so expert, it veils that understanding of ours and it superimposes upon us this concept of past and future. And that is how the living entity gets entrapped in this whole material experience, where we see that everything is moving around us, right? Everything is going through its own cycle of destruction. From its creation, it stays for some time and then it goes to destruction. But eventually, everything is ultimately going towards its destination of destruction, right? And all of this is being orchestrated by Krishna in his unmanifested form as a time factor. And that form of Krishna, who's the ultimate destroyer of all, is what he showed to Arjuna a few verses ago, where Arjuna said, I am seeing all these warriors entering into your mouth as if like you are death personified. And Krishna is going to confirm that again in the next verse. Right? After describing that how, time I am at the destroyer of this world, I have come here to destroy all people. With the exception of you, O Pandavas, all the soldiers here on both sides will be slain. And that is exactly what happened in the battle of in the war, Mahabharata war. Everyone, except for a handful of them, the 5 Pandavas and few handful of warriors were all that survived, but everybody was wiped out, right? And then therefore he says, therefore Arjuna, prepare to fight and win glory, conquer your enemies and flourish, enjoy a flourishing kingdom. They are already put to death by my arrangement, O Sabyasachi, right? Become my instrument and fight, right? So this is a very, very famous line. Nimitta matram bhava tab Sabyasachi. O Arjuna, become my instrument. So in a sense, indirectly, Krishna is predicting what is going to happen. So Krishna predicts the outcome of the war, right? And he's telling Arjuna, you fight and take the credit. Fight as an instrument of the Lord. Right? And this is a very, very important instruction, that this is the difference between divine life and material life, right? In divine life, or in divine living, we align our will with the will of the Lord, and therefore we learn to act as an instrument, right? We align our will with the Lord's will, right? And whereas material living, where we align our will with our ego. And this is what blinds us from seeing this all-pervasive aspect of the Lord, right? But because Arjuna was a great friend, a devotee, and he was non-envious of Krishna, Krishna showed him this form. And therefore he was able to see what was the will of the Lord, what is the ultimate end. And he says, therefore, become my instrument. I have already decided, in a sense. And this is such a beautiful concept, right? Of fatalism, right? But at the same time, there is free will. So this is the very, very inconceivable way how the living entity operates, right? So it is not that the outcome of the war is like, it's not some kind of a fatalism theory that everything is already decided, right? It is not that whether you fight or not, so therefore, even if you don't fight, because Arjuna can use this as an excuse. Oh, Krishna, you have already killed them, right? So why do you want me to kill again? I will just go away. Let me go to the forest and just meditate. That is what I wanted all along, right? But no, it is not exactly like that. Krishna gives every living entity its free will, and at the same time, Krishna also knows how one is going to execute one's free will, right? So this is this is what makes the nature of Krishna so special, and how he is at absolute truth, right? So here Krishna is indirectly saying that, Arjuna, this is the right thing to do. Therefore, this is my will. So by showing the death of all the Kauravas and majority of the Pandavas armies, Krishna is indirectly indicating, this is my will. Now execute my will and learn to live a divine life, right? And then he continues that Drona, Bhishma, Jayadratha, Karna, and all other great warriors have already been destroyed by me. Therefore, kill them and do not be disturbed. Simply fight and you'll vanquish your enemies in the battle, right? So because understand, so what does it mean that they have already been killed, right? So what it means is that, the kind of each and every one of us our choices in the past, they create the trajectory of our future. And many of these warriors, they have taken such unfortunate decisions in the past that now their trajectory of defeat and death is already decided, right? And therefore Arjuna was told, all you have to do is just become an instrument in executing the Lord's will, executing their own trajectory of life, right? So therefore, because it's not that you are killing them, their trajectory is already taking them towards death. Therefore, it is not that you have unnecessarily killed them. So this is the way Krishna is trying to give solace to Arjuna, who was very much overwhelmed right from the beginning of the Gita, that I don't want to be the cause of their death. But Krishna is saying, no, you are not the cause of their death. I, as a time factor, have already decided that they are going to die. Now you just be an instrument in facilitating my will. Right? So this is the beautiful dynamics of the will of the Lord, and at the same time the free will of every one of us. And how when these two align, that is when we live a very happy, progressive, spiritual, divine life, like that. So then after describing Krishna as a time factor, right? So from text number 35 to 46, again, very, very interesting section, where we will now see, again, Arjuna is going to offer his prayers, but now Arjuna's prayers in fearful surrender. Because when Arjuna saw this universal form, right, then again, Sanjay now describes that, with a faltering voice, Arjuna, he started speaking, "O Lord, O Master of the senses, the world becomes joyful upon hearing your name, and thus everyone becomes attached to you. Although the perfected beings offer you their respectful homage, the demons are afraid and they flee here and there. All this is rightly done." So he's able to see Krishna in his pure, majestic grandeur, right? And then he says, look, all the great devatas are all offering their homages to you. They're offering their obeisances unto you, right? You are the invincible source. You are the cause of all causes. In fact, you are transcendental to this material creation. Literally everything that Krishna described about himself in the previous chapters, Arjuna is now seeing them, right? And realizing them, right? And he says, you are the knower of everything. You are the supreme refuge. You are beyond the modes of material nature, right? Oh, limitless form. The whole cosmic manifestation is pervaded by you. And he glorifies further. You are the air. You are the supreme control. You are fire, water, moon, Brahma, the first living entity, right? I offer my obeisances thousands and thousands of times to you. Again, you see, at this point, Arjuna is already very much overwhelmed with fear. And these prayers that Arjuna is offering are not the kind of prayers that we heard in much earlier chapters, where it is out of some kind of a loving devotion, but rather these are prayers in fearful surrender, right? And then he says, this entire form of yours is so fearsome, so gruesome for me to see, so terrifying for me to see, right? And then he says, sometimes, now he starts apologizing also. This is very, very sweet prayer of Arjuna, where Arjuna starts apologizing. What does he say? Oh Krishna, sometimes thinking of you as my friend, I have referred to as O Yadava, hey Krishna, hey Yadava, hey Saketi. Oh Krishna, oh friend, oh Krishna, oh Yadava. I have referred to you in first person. I have referred to you by your first name, right? And the word Yadava is the clan, it is a dynasty in which Krishna was born. And when he uses the term Yadava, because the Yadu dynasty, from a social hierarchical point of view, is one tier lower than the Kuru dynasty. Arjuna belonged to the Kuru dynasty, Krishna belonged to the Yadu dynasty. And the Yadus are one tier lesser than the Kuru dynasty. So just to make fun of Krishna, hey, you are inferior to me. So he would constantly call Krishna, hey Yadava, like, oh lesser person, right? It's very jokingly, of course, not in a derogatory way, but sometimes even jokingly, he says, please forgive me whatever I may have done in madness or in love. I have dishonored you many times. Jesting as we relaxed, lay on the same bed. Can you imagine? I sat on the same bed as you. Oh my God, Krishna, please forgive me. Can you imagine how much Arjuna forgot that he's friend of Krishna? This entire terrifying form overwhelmed Arjuna so much that, he forgot that how he and Krishna are best friends. He are his cousins. He's only now, his entire vision is now tainted with that awe and reverence and fear and terrifying nature, right? I may have dishonored you many times, jested as we relaxed, lay on the same bed or sat or ate together, sometimes alone, sometimes in front of many friends. Oh, infallible one, please excuse me for all those offenses, like that. And then he says, I offer my respectful obeisances. I ask for your mercy. Just like how sometimes a father forgives one's impudent son, likewise, or a friend tolerates another friend, or a wife tolerates the familiarity of her husband or her partner, right? So please tolerate the wrongs that I may have done to you. And then he says, after seeing this entire universal form, Krishna, I am no more able to maintain my composure. So he starts requesting Krishna, please, I've had enough of this universal form. I don't want to see this universal form anymore. Please shut down, switch off your multimedia show, your 10D multimedia show. It is getting too overwhelming for me, right? So Arjuna now requests Krishna to kindly show his four-handed form, to show his four-handed form, right? He says, I've had enough. It was my big stupid mistake that I wanted to see this form, but now I cannot handle it anymore. It was such an overwhelming experience. Can you just imagine? Of course, we cannot even imagine, right? He is looking at death personified. The time factor is at death as well, right? As an ultimate destroying force of this universe, and is looking at it face to face, right? What does it feel like? It is described at the time of death. The scriptures explain that it feels like there are like thousands of scorpions stinging your body. That is how painful that phenomena of death is. And what to speak of looking at the entirety of that is just one death of one person. You're looking at the entirety of destruction and death of this entire universe, right? And you're looking at it face to face. What an overwhelming phenomena that Arjuna was going through, right? So this is the other side of, so many times this entire description that we read in this universal form chapter, right? How he has no beginning, he has no end, how is this big gigantic form. This is the kind of description that many times we hear across many world cultures also. When that supreme being has to be described, these are the kind of descriptions which are spoken of. So drawing parallels with the Vedic tradition, we understand that they are actually, all these different world traditions are trying to describe the understanding of the absolute truth as the Purusha, as the way the Lord is present in his unmanifested form within this creation. So all these world traditions are only talking about the Purusha understanding of the Lord, which is this universal form, the time factor, right? Whatever way we may understand, right? So that is what all other world traditions are talking about, right? So when Arjuna found this particular form of the Lord very overwhelming, so he requests, my Lord, please come back to your four-handed form, right? So then after this, very interesting section here. So now from text number 47 to 54, very important section, right? Where Krishna is going to reveal the secret to see Krishna, as he is, or in other words, to see Krishna in his true form, right? So then it is described, text number 47 described, O Arjuna, Happily I have shown you by my internal potency the supreme universal form within this material world. No one before has seen this primal original form of mine, right? So this this param rupam param drishtam atma yoga, by my internal potency I have shown you this form, right? So what did, if you remember, if you recall from our earlier discussion, we wrote in one of the previous slides that this universal form, right, it was a rare form and it was also a fearful form, right? And then he described, oh Arjuna, no one before you has seen this universal form of mine, neither by studying the Vedas, nor by performing sacrifices, nor by charity, nor by pious activities, nor by severe penances can I be seen in this form in this material world, right? So this is a speciality. That's why it is extremely rare, right? You have been perturbed and bewildered by seeing this horrible feature of mine. Now let it be finished. My devotee, O Arjuna, you are my devotee. Be free again from all these disturbances with a peaceful mind. Now you can see the form that you desire. So because Arjuna didn't want to see that universal form, right? So now see the form that you actually, so here the word that is used here is Ghora Rupam. If you remember, I used that term earlier also. Ghora Rupam. Ghora Rupa means fearful form, right? So then Arjuna says, then Krishna, first he comes from the universal form, he first comes to his four-handed Vishnu form. Yeah, so usually when you see Lord Vishnu, you know, he's present in his four-handed forms with the Shankar Chakra Gada Padma, the conch shell, the lotus, the club and the disc, right? And then he finally comes to his two-handed form. His two-handed Krishna form. And Krishna is going to say something very, very interesting. He says, when Arjuna sees this form, he says, oh Krishna, oh Janardhana, seeing this human-like form, so beautiful. Now he starts describing Krishna's two-handed form. It is described that it is Tava Saumyam Janardhana. So Rupam Saumyam. So this is a Saumya Rupa. Saumya Rupa means very gentle and beautiful. So this two-handed form is described as very gentle or beautiful. This is called Saumya Vapu or Saumya Rupa or the gentle form, right? So then Arjuna is, you know, he says, now my mind is restored. Now I was so overwhelmed and I lost my composure earlier, but now finally I've come back to my normal state. Then Krishna says something very interesting. He says, oh Arjuna, you see this two-handed form? This is Sududarsham. He uses the word. Earlier he used the word, this was my universal form is rare, but now he says my two-handed form is extremely rare. It is extremely rare. He says Durdasham. Let me write that word. Su Dudarsham. So Durdarsham means difficult to see. Sudurdarsham means extremely rare to see this particular form. Idam Rupam Dishtwan Asiyan Mama Deva Api Asya Rupasya Nityam Darshana Kankshinaha. Oh Arjuna, this form of mine which you are seeing is very, very difficult to behold. Even the Devatas are seeking an opportunity to see this form. Right? In fact, this form, Naham Vederna Tapasana Danena Cha Yajena Sakhyam Evam Vidho Drishtum Dishtwan Asimam Yatha. So this form that you are seeing of right now, it cannot be seen ordinarily, right? So you need this divine vision. You need a transcendental vision to see this. Now at this point, some of you may be thinking, what? Universal form is rare, that is understood. But The two-handed form of Krishna, everybody in Mahabharata saw that. Even I see it when I go to the temple. I see the form of Krishna in his beautiful two-handed form, standing with Radharani, right? So I see that particular form. And why is Krishna saying that this is extremely rare? I thought that is an extremely common form, and the universal form is an extremely rare form, right? And usually, many times, especially in the popular understanding of the Bhagavad Gita, this specific chapter is usually highlighted as that grand crescendo chapter, right? Where Krishna is now, finally, he has shown his universal form, and now he has convinced Arjuna, look, I am this mighty God, ha ha ha, now you should listen to me, right? That is how, popularly this particular chapter is presented. But if you remember from our previous discussion in the 10th chapter, as soon as the Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita was spoken, 8, 9, 10, 11, and in text number 11, when he says that, Nashiyami Atma Bhavasto Jnana Deepena Bhashvata, I enter into the heart, and with the lamplight of knowledge, I destroy this darkness due to ignorance. Krishna entered into Arjuna's heart and he already convinced him. And that is where the next verse, Arjuna starts glorifying Krishna, Parabrahma, Parandhama, Paitram, you are that supreme Lord, you are that supreme absolute truth. All the great sages are also confirming this. Arjuna was already convinced. He didn't need further convincing by showing a scary form like this universal form, right? So sometimes when people don't listen to you, sometimes you have to scare them to get things done, right? But Krishna is not operating, or is not trying to inspire Arjuna from a space of fear, right? This is a very, very important aspect, a very important concept. If you look at broadly many world traditions, there are 4 levels in which the concept of God has been described, right? Many of them, they try to inspire or whatever, motivate their followers by portraying God in a fearful form, right? As what we saw, the Purusha form, that fearful time factor form, and by motivating their practitioners by fear. If you don't do this, God is going to punish you, right? So that is sort of fear people try to worship God, right? But then, greater than that motivation of fear is the motivation of reward, where you say, okay, earlier, if you don't do this, God will punish you. Now, if you do this, God will reward you. So that is actually a more cultured and a more sophisticated way of understanding God. But even that is also not the highest. Better, greater than the concept of reward is a sense of duty. What is that sense of duty? Where, oh God, you are providing me with air, you are providing me with water, you are providing me with, and you're not sending me a bill every day also, right? The government, the city corporations, they bill us for providing electricity and water. But Krishna is providing us air since time immemorial, but he has never ever sent us a bill, right? So it is out of sense of duty. Krishna, you are the master, you are the creator. So it is out of sense of duty. Let me start worshipping you. Let me start respecting you. Let me at least acknowledge you, out of a sense of duty, right? So which is far better than fear and reward. However, there is one more stage, which is even superior to that sense of duty, where one approaches God motivated by love. And this 4th level is described, this is the highest understanding of God, right? So this love, or this mood of loving service or loving devotional service is the highest understanding or the highest motivating factor for one to approach God, which transcends fear, reward, and even a sense of duty. And it is extremely rare in this world where one develops that kind of an understanding of trying to love God as a person. Because when you want to love someone, we are people, right? We have a person, we are a person or a personality. We have a personality. Likewise, we are trying to approach God also in his sweet, gentle, beautiful form, and in his extraordinarily attractive personality. And that developing that connection is extremely rare. So when Krishna says this two-handed form is extremely rare, what his meaning is that not just seeing Krishna, Krishna, but rather seeing Krishna with that vision of love, with the understanding that that great, huge, gigantic, universal form is actually you, Krishna, right? These are non-different. This is your manifested form, that is your unmanifested form. Otherwise, there's absolutely no difference between you and that universe. So you are, in fact, the source of that universe form. In fact, you are more than that universal form. That understanding, and not just that, with that understanding, approaching Krishna out of love, the Raja Guhya, the confidential aspect, that is extremely rare. And therefore, Krishna is reiterating the power of bhakti. And therefore, in the next verse, in text number 54, he says, Bhaktyatva ananya shakya aham evam vedo Arjuna. Only by ananya bhakti, only by this unalloyed, undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am standing before you, and can be thus seen directly. Only this way you can understand and enter into my mysteries. So it is not just, so this is the understanding, that it is not that a pure devotee of the Lord is disconnected from the understanding of Krishna's greatness. Sometimes people carry this misunderstanding, especially in many times in India, you see people, they only want to connect to Krishna as their beloved child or as a beloved lover or something like that, without the proper understanding that that same child or lover that you're trying to approach is also this universal form, right? So that is what is called as sahajism, or sahaja, means something that is very easily born, or something which is very what should I say, what is the best word for that, something that is very prematurely taken, without the right qualification, right, to prematurely approaching Krishna in this loving form, right, is also a kind of a deviation, or a deviated philosophy. But rather, the right way of understanding Krishna and approaching Krishna is, while all of that is there, all of that understanding is there in the background, building over all that tattva is an understanding of that rasa, or that understanding of that sweet mellows. Tattva here means these philosophical principles. It's understanding that Krishna, you are all that Raja Vidya, right? All that king of knowledge that we studied, that behind understanding that Krishna's Aishwarya, his greatness, right? On that platform, one learns to understand Krishna's sweetness and displays that sweet understanding of sweetness, or the relationship in sweetness. And that is extremely rare, reconciling these two and approaching Krishna with that mood. And therefore he says, only by my undivided devotional service can I be understood, and only this way one can understand my mysteries, right? And after saying this, Krishna ends with a very, very powerful sutra in text number 55. Prabhupada calls this as the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Right? So what is it? Mat karma krin, mat parmo, mat bhakta sanga varjitaha, nirvaira sarva bhuteshu, yah sa mam veti pandava. Oh Arjuna, mat karma krit, right? Perform all your work for me. Mat paramo, one who works for me, one who makes me the supreme goal of his life. Mat bhaktasa, and one who is always engaging in my pure devotional service, and who's free from all fruitive or other mental karma, jnana, free from all of this, one who works for Krishna, making him the supreme goal. And importantly, one who's friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me. So what is the essence of Bhagavad Gita? The essence of Bhagavad Gita is that having understood Krishna's greatness, right? In fact, we are just paraphrasing what we already studied. If you remember, in the Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita also, in chapter 10, text number 8, right? Aham sarvasva prabhavo matta sarvam pravate. I am the source of this material and spiritual worlds. We understood Krishna's greatness. Having understood Krishna's greatness, right, then one tries to connect with Krishna's sweetness, right? And how does one do that, right? By working for Krishna, making him one supreme goal of his life, right? So what is the action that I need to do? Working for Krishna, or in other words, making Krishna as a goal of life. Right? And when we do that, then what happens? Naturally, one also needs to develop being friendly. The word that Krishna uses, nirvairaha. Vaira means hostility. But such a person is also becomes free from hostility. Nirvairaha. Free from hostility. Or no enmity, no envy towards other. So that's why he's very, very friendly to all living entities, right? Because one is able to now see the connection of Krishna with every living entity. Naturally, where is the question of being hostile with anyone, right? So that is the deep vision of such an advanced devotee. And this is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada writes it very emphatically in the purport to text number 55, right? Understanding Krishna's greatness, one has to now connect with Krishna by working for Krishna, making him the supreme goal, right? And that's nirvairaha sarvabhuteshu, by being friendly to all living entities, giving up all your hostility. Samameti Pandava. Such a person, he comes to me. He eventually comes to Krishna, like that. So having described this is how Krishna again emphasizes that principle of connecting to him in love, connecting to him with that mood of unalloyed devotional service, that ananya bhakti, like that. So with this, we'll conclude. I'll very quickly summarize what we discussed in our discussion today. So we began this chapter, Vishwarupa Darshana, where Krishna in this chapter is going to show his universal form. So the main theme is understanding how Krishna is material, and at the same time he is not material also. He has a material form which we will call as his universal form. The entire universe is his material form. And at the same time, he isn't material, he is also aloof from it. So this chapter begins from the previous chapter, Arjuna took the theme that how Krishna, he is present in everything in this creation as the essence of everything. So he wanted to see, Krishna, what is that Aishwarya Rupa? What is the mystical form by which you are pervading the entire creation? Please show me that form of yours. Then Krishna says, okay, for that I have to give you a special vision. And as a special vision was given, he starts seeing infinite eyes, infinite ears, infinite, and as if like millions of suns everywhere, right? And then he starts offering prayers in astonishment. And there we understood this concept of this Purusha. What exactly is universal form? It is not a factual form, but is more of a conceptual or a functional form, right? And this functional form, when Arjuna saw, was completely terrified and was overwhelmed with fear. Why fear? Because in the next 3 verses, Krishna reveals this is this form of time. And what is the time doing? The time is literally destroying everything. Literally for things, it is destroying, and for people, it is as good as death, right? And in that form of death, how all these soldiers, all these warriors who are there, Krishna says that, their trajectory towards me has already been decided. Just like how Arjuna describes, just like how the river flows to its ultimate destination, their trajectory is already decided. They're just coming into my mouth of death. Therefore, just become my instrument and take this glory of victory. Just become my instrument and fight. And we discuss the concept of, this is the principle of divine living, where we learn to align our will with the will of the Lord. In this context, we also discussed this analogy of fire and heat. Fire, which is outside the pot, causes every action inside the pot in the form of heat. That is how the time factor also operates. So Krishna, who's outside this creation, intervenes and literally permeates. Heat is there everywhere inside that pot. Likewise, time is there everywhere inside this creation. It is passing through me now, right? We are all going through those experiences in this domain of time. So we can never separate the time out of it. Just like how you cannot separate the heat out of the, when I use the word heat, I mean the cooking factor. You can never uncook the vegetables. You can never uncook the rice. Likewise, the time, once it operates, it goes through its cycle of destruction or its path of destruction. Things cannot come back. And that is what time is doing to us. So then Arjuna, when he sees this form, he starts apologizing to Krishna. Oh my God, Krishna, I thought you were my friend. I was joking with you. I was using sometimes jokingly, using some derogatory names for you. But please forgive me. And I cannot handle this form. Please come back to your four-handed form. Why the four-handed form? Because the four-handed form is form of Krishna in reverence. Because Vishnu is a more of a reverential form. So Arjuna, he cannot straight away ask, come back to the two-handed form. Because he was still carrying that conception of awe and reverence. So a tolerable form of reverence is this four-handed form. So out of being politeness, he says, please come back to your four-handed form. So Krishna then says, look, this is my Ghora Rupa, my fearful, rare, universal form. And he comes back to his four-handed form, and then he comes back to his two-handed form. And two-handed form he describes as a Saumya Rupa, very beautiful, gentle form. And he says, this is extremely rare form to see. Why is it extremely rare? Because that vision of love, that vision of bhakti, the vision of Ananya bhakti or undeviated, uncontaminated devotional vision is something that is extremely rare. To see that this two-handed Krishna is that gigantic, he's a source of that gigantic, fearful, terrifying universal form. The entire universes are there within the two-handed Krishna form is an extremely difficult vision to have, right? And therefore, understanding that Krishna's greatness, when one tries to understand, to connect to Krishna's sweetness by making Krishna as one's goal of life and working for Krishna and free from all hostility, one will ultimately attain him. And that is the secret essence of the Bhagavad Gita. All right. So with this, let's stop our discussion today. If there are any quick questions or comments anybody has, right? So we already have a question. Gail, would you like to?
Yes. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Well, you just answered my question about why Arjuna didn't directly ask for the two-handed form. So my next question is this fatalistic conception, right? That, well, Krishna has already killed everybody. So what need does Arjuna have to do anything? So I understand that, we basically we kill ourselves, right, by our past misdeeds. So, but still, so therefore it's going to happen because Krishna's will must be executed, right? Whether we decide to cooperate or not. So I still ask, why couldn't Arjuna have just gone off to the forest since everybody was going to be killed anyway?
Right. So yes. So because that is where that newfound relationship that Arjuna found with Krishna, right? That where he wanted to serve Krishna in that mood of devotion, and serving Krishna means accepting the will of the Lord and becoming an instrument of execution of his will. That is the newfound relationship that Arjuna discovered, right? Of course, it was always there. Temporarily, Krishna made Arjuna forget, and he enacted this whole pastime of Gita so that we can hear the Bhagavad Gita. But looking at it from Arjuna as a conditioned soul, right? So here is Arjuna who just rediscovered his relationship with Krishna, and therefore he wanted to serve the Lord, and that is the burden of love that he took up. Right? It is not that he said, oh, Krishna, you already killed them. Okay, goodbye. I can go back to my forest. No, he really understood that, Krishna, if this is your will, I will become your instrument. I will become, your puppet. and you are the string master, and I will just be like your puppet and I will execute your will. Because finally, Krishna will tell us the future, but at the same time, we should be there present to execute that as well. So this is the beautiful dynamic that I was trying to highlight earlier also, that it is not that just because things are already done, a devotee gives up one's actions. No, when one understands the will of the Lord, right? Like for example, Srila Prabhupada many times would say, this the 10,000 golden age has already been predicted, but that does not mean we all now should go and sleep. But no, that this is the mood of a devotee. My master, my Lord wants this 10,000 glorious years to be the glorious year, the golden age years. So let me now make efforts and endeavor to fulfill that. So it's a very, very beautiful dynamic where, yes, at one level, Lord has already ordained it, but at the same time, a devotee takes it up as his personal mandate that I have to become the instrument of Lord's will and execute that like that.
Yeah, okay, yes, I understand that the devotee, he wants to cooperate out of his love for Krishna, but I feel like the fatalistic conception still is valid, because even if there is no one to cooperate with the Lord, his, the karma will be executed, isn't it?
Right.
Somehow or other.
So this is actually a slightly deep philosophical topic. That so if karma indeed is being executed, then karma is God. Karma is that ultimate, the ultimate principle. Karma becomes the highest truth. So there's a whole school of Vedic philosophy called as the Karma Mimamsakas, who claim that ultimately, look, why did Bhishma, Drona, why did Karna, why did all of them die? Because they had their bad karma, therefore they have been killed. So just to counteract that understanding very beautifully, this specific, so this is how we have to look at, we have to wear the lens of a philosopher now. So what is the cause of all causes? Is karma the cause of all causes? Then Krishna becomes irrelevant. Whether God exists or doesn't exist, he just created a system called as karma. Like, for example, the government created a rule called as traffic rules, right? Sometimes if you see in many modern countries, there is no traffic cop actually standing there. Everything is automated. If you break any traffic laws, immediately, there are cameras that take the signal and that will send you a bill, a ticket at the end of the day. In some countries, it automatically deducts from your bank account also. So things have become that level. So you may say, God just created a system called as karma, and now he's out of the loop. Karma is a real ruler. So that is the understanding of karma Mimamsaka philosophers. But no, so the Vedanta philosophy very specifically explains, yes, while the karma philosophy is still there, ultimately the cause of all causes is Krishna, Supreme Lord, the Param Satya, the absolute truth. And that absolute truth, he has multiple ways of ensuring that his will be done. So specifically in this case, he used his devotee as his instrument. Sometimes he may use material nature as an instrument. Sometimes he may use karma as an instrument. Right? Again, we are not denying that also. But the important principle that we need to take from this is that Krishna, the absolute truth, is a cause of all causes. And when it comes to the life of a devotee becomes merely an instrument in the hands of the Lord, and thereby, so it is not that Arjuna is going to create further karma, because if karma is the main philosophy, then Arjuna killing others will also become further karma to him, and that will create another cycle or loop of karma. But it is no more karma acting here, it is Krishna's will acting here. So just to show Krishna's will is supreme to even karma, that specific display of how he is killing everyone is being demonstrated. And therefore is saying now, when Krishna wants to execute his will, he brings in his personal associates, his devotees. And that is why when it's not just when Krishna is executing, but even whatever is happening even in the life of a devotee is not karmic. It is purely Krishna orchestrating things in the life of a devotee, and Krishna using his devotees to orchestrate things in this world as well. Right? Does that?
That was helpful, Prabhu. That was helpful. I did also have a question about the. It seems like, I think we discussed this in another class too. The two universal forms, if I can use that language.
Yes.
That was, so there's one form where, Arjuna saw everybody going into Krishna's mouth, for example, right? That was the first vision that he saw, I think. So then when we're talking about Krishna as time, was that a completely separate form that he showed Arjuna, or what?
No, both are same, because time is a destroyer, right?
Yeah.
So time is what that manifests as death to everyone. So what Krishna showed earlier, where he saw everybody, all the warriors rushing into Krishna's mouth and their heads being crushed between his teeth, that is the death personified form, is also the time factor. So in fact, when Arjuna asks, who are you, who's literally killing everyone, then Krishna says, time, I am the destroyer of all. So yes, it is actually, so in this specific chapter, the universal form that Krishna showed is the form of time. And whereas if you read elsewhere in the Vedic literature, the universal form is specifically a term used, which is the physical representation of the universe. Where, remember, in the previous class also I mentioned that time that is a form of the Lord, where all the 14 planetary systems are arranged in the body of the Lord, where the bones are the mountains are his bones, the rivers are his veins, the clouds are his sky, the upper planetary systems are the upper part of his body, the lower planets are lower part of his body. So that is a description of the universal form you'll read elsewhere in Vedic literature. So that is the physical representation of this world as a universal form. What we saw today is a functional representation of the Lord as time. The Lord is acting in this world as a time factor. Like the heat inside the pot is causing things to act and cook, right? In the context of cooking, action means cooking. So in that time factor, the functional form he shows here in this chapter.
Yeah, you answered a question I had without my asking. That was nice. Yeah, because I was going to ask you about these two different kinds of universal forms, the physical, right, where actually nothing is happening, but in this time form, right? Here he's showing how in this universal form that he showed Arjuna, he's showing Arjuna how come the world is moving, acting, functioning the way it is, and it's because of time. Okay, yeah, that was beautiful, Prabhu. If I know that this is the last thing, Krishna as the enjoyer. You mentioned you referred back to 529, and I just want to get some clarification why we say that Krishna is the enjoyer when he doesn't have any interest in enjoying this world as we do. He doesn't need any sense gratification. So why do we call him the enjoyer? You mentioned something, but I didn't catch what you said.
Right. So just like how Krishna is enjoying his spiritual Leelas, this creation also is a kind of Leela for him. Because literally all that Krishna does is enjoy. Whether it be with respect to the spiritual world or with respect to material world, all that Krishna is doing is enjoying his Leelas. That is why he's Leela Purushottama. He's the supreme personality of enjoying pastimes. So even this creation is also his Leela, his play, and he enjoys that play by causing things to happen here, right? So it is not some kind of a sense gratificatory enjoyment, but rather it is just his sense of being in this world and causing things to happen. That happens when he enters into this world as a Purusha, right? And in fact, this is where things get even more deeper, especially in the Upanishads. They like to talk about this concept. Literally anything that we experience as enjoyment is worthwhile only if it is connected to that Purusha's enjoyment. Right? In fact, what we experience as enjoyment in this world is actually, we may falsely think that I am enjoying, but rather it is all happening because the Purusha is enjoying. Just like how the example is given, when the sun rises, our eyes can see, right? Understand, forget the electricity and the artificial lighting that you have today. But in a more natural environment, only when the sun rises, life begins to happen. So what are the sunrises compared to? Where the Purusha is waking up now. When you and I wake up, we open our eyes. So when the Purusha wakes up, he opens his eyes, and his eyes are the sun and the moon. And when there is sun and moon, when there is light, life happens. And that is when motion happens. And that is why you and I are able to see because of the sun. So likewise, literally everything that we do is, indirectly being facilitated by the Purusha. Even our so-called enjoyment is also being facilitated by the Purusha, because he is enjoying. We are experiencing a small semblance of that as our own enjoyment, but because of that ego, we think, I am the enjoyer. That is the understanding here.
We're not behaving in a way that is pleasing to him by, for example, pursuing activities of sense gratification. So what is it that he's actually enjoying?
So, like I said, this very world itself, the very creation itself, the Lila of creation itself is his enjoyment. That is what the Purusha enjoys. Right? The Lord as the Purusha, Krishna as a universal form, or as this Purusha, he's enjoying this whole world, the way it is happening. Everything, the world is running right now. The sun is rising and setting, and the planets are there out there in outer space. So many forms of life are happening, this entire world. So all of that is happening because the Purusha exists. His very existence is his own enjoyment. Just like how, as long as the soul exists in this body, everything in this body seems to function. So in that way, all that the soul needs to do is just be present in this body, and all the bodily function. The heart is enjoying by pumping. The lungs are enjoying by, when I use the word enjoyment, meaning that they are functioning in the way they are meant to. So everything which is happening in this body is happening because of the presence of that one tiny soul. Likewise, because of the presence of that Purusha, this whole world is operating, and that is his enjoyment, right? This is, of course, not like his spiritual enjoyment. This is very, very different.
I think this word enjoyment is throwing me,
right?
Because I'm not understanding what is giving him pleasure, by seeing, because this is a world of punishment actually, and he loves us, so he doesn't want to see us condemning ourselves to this life of misery, so that's why it's escaping me what he is finding actually pleasurable about, I understand it is only by his presence that everything is going on, everything is functioning, but to say that therefore it is his enjoyment to see that, everything is functioning for the sake of our punishment, to discourage us from staying here.
The world is not exactly a place of punishment, but rather the world is a place of reformation.
Or even still,
right? Right. But the thing is, sometimes even though you create a world of reformation, or you create a university called this universe, where everybody is getting trained and they are all going through their own journey of education, right? But still, from the Purusha's point of view, this entire play of creation is his enjoyment. It is not it's not like the kind of enjoyment that he enjoys with his associates in the spiritual world, right? That is a totally different level of enjoyment. But here, this is a different kind of enjoyment where he's just existing in this world and causing things to happen, and just watching them all. Look how everything is happening. That's it. So that play of creation is his Leela. That is what he's enjoying, right? In fact, Srila Prabhupada, very nicely, he writes in one this is a purport in the 3rd canto, where Prabhupada writes that before we understand Krishna's Rasa Leela, we have to understand Krishna's creation Leela. Both are his Leelas, right? The Leela that he has with Prakriti, by which he's creating and causing things to happen, that is also a kind of play for him. And once you understand that, you will understand, oh, this is where I am stuck. Then the impetus to understand Krishna's spiritual Leelas will also come. Like that. So there is definitely, otherwise, if there is no enjoyment for Krishna, then he wouldn't create. Understand? He is deriving pleasure, but not pleasure at our expense. Again, not some kind of a sadistic pleasure that, look, I created this world, this prison house to make this person suffer. Not that kind of a happiness.
That's how it seems.
Yeah, not that kind of a pleasure, but rather just the pleasure that this world is operating. Things are flowing in such perfect order, right? That the world is going through its own cycles of creation, maintenance, and destruction. So just that order of this universe is what is enjoying, right? Like that.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you very, very much.
Right.
Hopefully I will get some deeper realization about this enjoyment.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So anybody else has any other questions or comments? Right. Some of you, you liked today's presentation on the Virata Rupa and the Supreme Lord, the Saumya Rupa. Okay. All right. So yes. So that brings us about to end of today's discussion. And this week we'll have only one class, that is today, and we'll resume our classes. We'll not have a class tomorrow, but we'll directly resume next Friday, where we'll begin with chapter number 12, which is called as Bhakti Yoga. Now Arjuna has seen two extremes. In chapters 9 and 10, he saw that sweetness of devotion, where he's approaching Krishna in his personal two-handed form, that loving form, and he has also seen his big, gigantic, unmanifested form. Right now, he's confused. Whom should I approach? That form of greatness or that form of sweetness? So that is going to be his question in the beginning of the next chapter, and Krishna is going to talk about Bhakti Yoga in the next chapter. All right. So thank you all very much for joining us today. Let us conclude with our closing prayers. Joining your palms together. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunattu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you all very much. See you in our next week's discussion. Hare Krishna. So we will meet again next Friday. So we'll have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday classes next weekend. Hare Krishna.